Lay on a light. Good Friday night. Welcome to Lay on the Light. You know, I have to be honest with you. I think and I've experienced it myself. It's a lot of sadness, a lot of loneliness, a lot of panicking. Seems the adversary has been afoot. And to this extent, I wish to play a talk in October 2004 General Conference by the late, great Elder Boyd K. Packer. Without further ado, Elder Packer.
Our youngest son and his wife and family stopped to see. A few weeks ago, our youngest son and his wife and family stopped to see us. First one out of the car was the 2-year-old grandson. He came running, his arms outstretched, shouting, "Grandpa, Grandpa, Grandpa." He hugged my legs, and I looked down at that smiling face and those big innocent eyes and thought, what kind of a world awaits him? For a moment, I had that feeling of anxiety, that fear of the future that so many parents express to us. Everywhere we go, fathers and mothers worry about the future of their children in this very troubled world. But then, a feeling of assurance came over me. My fear of the future faded. That guiding, comforting spirit with which we in the church are so familiar brought to my remembrance what I already knew. The fear of the future was gone. That bright-eyed little 2-year-old can have a good life, a very good life, and so can his children and his grandchildren, even though they will live in a world where there is much of wickedness. They will see many events transpire in the course of their lifetime. Some of these will tax their courage and extend their faith. But if they seek prayerfully for help and guidance, they shall be given power over adverse things. Such trials shall not be permitted to stand in the way of their progress, but instead should act as stepping stones to greater knowledge. As a grandfather, and as one of the 12, I'll give you some counsel, some caution, and a lot of encouragement. I could do this much better if the grandmother in our family, my wife of 57 years, were standing beside me. Mothers know so much more about life than fathers do, but I'll do the best I can. We do not fear the future for ourselves or for our children. We live in dangerously troubled times. The values that steadied mankind in earlier times are being tossed away. We must not ignore Moroni's words when he saw our day and said, "Ye must awake to a sense of your awful situation." And we cannot take lightly this warning from the Book of Mormon. The Lord, in his great infinite goodness, doth bless and prosper those who put their trust in him, doing all things for the welfare and happiness of his people. Yea, then is the time that they do harden their hearts, and do forget the Lord their God, and do trample under their feet the Holy One. Yea, and this, because of their exceeding ease and luxury and prosperity. And thus we see that except the Lord doth chasten his people with many afflictions, except he doth visit them with death and with terror and with famine and with all manner of pestilence, they will not remember him. Had you noticed that word terror in that prophetic Book of Mormon warning? The moral values upon which civilization itself must depend spiral downward at an ever-increasing pace. Nevertheless, I do not fear the future. World War I ended only 6 years before I was born. When we were children, the effects of war were everywhere present. World War II came only 15 years later, and dark clouds were already gathering. We had the same anxious feelings that many of you do now. We wondered what the future held for us in an unsettled world. When I was a boy, childhood diseases appeared regularly in every community. When someone had chicken pox or measles or mumps, the health officer would visit the home and place a quarantine sign on the porch or in the window to warn everyone to stay away. In a large family like ours, those diseases would visit by relay, one child getting it from another, so the sign might stay up for weeks. We could not blockade ourselves inside our homes or stay hidden away to avoid those terrible contagions. We had to go to school, to employment, to church, to life. 2 of my sisters were stricken with very severe cases of measles. At first they seemed to recover. A few weeks later, Mother glanced out of a window and saw Adele leaning against a swing. She was the younger of the 2. She was faint and weak with fever. It was rheumatic fever. It came as a complication from measles. The other sister also had the fever. There was little could be done. In spite of all the prayers of my parents, Adele died. She was 8 years old. While Nona, 2 years older, recovered, she had fragile health for most of her life. When I was in the 7th grade in a health class, a teacher read an article. A mother learned that the neighbor children had chicken pox. She faced the probability that her children would have it as well, perhaps one at a time. She determined to get it over with, all at once. So she sent her children to the neighbors to play with their children, to let them be exposed, and then she'd be done with it. Imagine her horror when the doctor finally came and announced it was not chicken pox the children had, it was smallpox. The best thing to do then, and what we must do now, is avoid places where there's danger of physical or spiritual contagion.
You know, I can kind of identify with what Elder Packer was talking about. Folks, there's no doubt that we're still knee-deep in a world pandemic. And I have to be honest with you. The effects of the pandemic have been draining to me emotionally. I feel like this world has gone so much sometimes that it gets hard to stand my ground in not compromising faith. But If Elder Packer is telling us as a church 17 years ago not to fear, then I guess, really, who are we to fear? You see, the devil, our adversary, Lucifer, or Satan, he wants to raise panic. He wants to raise fear. He wants to divide families. I become very sensitive as to what's going on. And to be honest with you, it's affected my bipolar lately. Heavenly Father, every time I go to Him and say that it's getting out of control, can't handle it, He'll remind me that I got a purpose on this earth. That there's still more to come. The best is yet to come. I don't know about you guys, but I certainly hope so. I can certainly hope so. We don't need to fear. If Elder Packard says that we shouldn't fear, then we shouldn't. As a convert, for my first 14 years in the church, I respected Elder Packer and what he had to say, and all the goodness that he's brought to us as human beings. I know with this pandemic, the news and social media, entertainment media and everything, there is a world out there that's so much steeped in wickedness. They want us to fear. They want us to fear. They want us to have so much fear and hate in our heart that it turns us away from the direction where we need to be with Heavenly Father. I've noticed that the morning after I've had a bad day, I'll go to Heavenly Father and sometimes I'll ask Him, what can we do to fix it? This morning, I was thoroughly convinced that there was nothing that could be done to fix it. And to be honest with you, right now, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers as to how we overcome some of these fears right now, with increasing worry and stress and strife. The problem is the way Lucifer, our adversary, has set this up. He wants people running around in fear and forgetting how powerful God is. My friend Brad, regardless, it's a synonym for him because in many ways I felt like he blocked my progress spiritually. But there was one thing that he was fond of saying when I would get overwhelmed. He said, Jimmy, big God, small problem. And so I'm going to let you guys go. And I want you to know that we don't need to be afraid. Take care, and God bless.